How are you doing? I'm Andreas, and in today's video I'm going to review a hand from the $25,000 tournament from the Pokerstars Championship in the Bahamas. Hope you guys enjoy it.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are live from the Atlantis in the Bahamas. Are you ready for a unique poker experience, as this is the ultimate David and Goliath battle, the biggest $25,000 event in history? And now, this is the moment you've all been waiting for. It's time to go to war on the felt battlefield of champions for the Pokerstars Player No Limit Hold'em Championship. Let's shuffle up and deal.
Listeners of the Poker in the Ears podcast will know, one, by answering questions about Bojack Horseman in Superfan versus Stapes, he missed out on the package in the free roll league. Server issues in Denmark prevented him entering the final week when he was second place on the leaderboard, but we gave him a second chance. He won that platinum pass. He's here in the Bahamas, met him at the reception last night. He is so made up to be here, and great that he gets to play on one of our 2 feature tables.
If you guys haven't listened to that episode of the podcast, it is really something special when he is awarded that pass. I'm flabbergasted. What is happening here?
So King Jack for Simao, he opens to 600. Postma calls with Ace King. Koeman 3-bets with Ace King. Action back on the original razor with the dominated hand.
I think you can safely get out of the way here. No? No? Nope.
Alternatively, you can 4-bet. Re-raise to 7,600.
Now, I really love this 4-bet if you think that
The action starts with Simao opening it up from somewhat early position with the King Jack offsuit. Then Postma does flat call the Ace King offsuit in the cutoff before Koeman finds the same hand on the button, squeezing it to 2.9k. Comes back to Simao, who decides to bluff 4-bet the King Jack offsuit to 7.6k. And then it gets back to Postma, who has just called the raise, facing now this 4-bet, decides to make the call, and then Koeman closing the action, call or calling as well versus the 4-bet.
you can get some of these more amateur players to fold Ace King, which I think in this position you might be able to do. At the very least, people probably aren't going to jam on you with Ace King. So that's one way that you can sort of get away with this. You're not going to get 5-bet bluffed. You're going to get some better hands to fold, I think, when you're playing against folks that aren't used to playing 25K tournaments. And at the very least, they're probably not going to risk all of their chips. So then you have the opportunity to beat them post-flop. See, when they just call. Now, Koeman's in an interesting spot.
So he was the 3-better.
Here's the original re-raiser. He's in position. And Simao does have the disadvantage of being out of position. But in a situation like this, he's the aggressor, and he's going to have first opportunity to really put the pressure on.
So bloated pot.
Yeah.
Let's have the Case King. Instead, it's Jack 8-6. Simao out-flops the 2 guys who had him crushed.
Why outplay him when you can outflop him? That's what I say.
And remember, Postma and Koeman are not drawing dead, but they are drawing to a chop. That's the 7% split equity you see on the screen.
I was really looking forward to Joao Simao's outplaying these guys.
The flop comes check 8-6 rainbow, and Simao goes and checks it with his top pair. He comes to Postma, who now puts out a bet of half pot. Now he has just called and then called the 4-bet cold again in the cutoff here, and his range will typically be jacks or better, sometimes ace king, but there's a lot of people out there who would not do that with ace king. They usually 3-bet the ace king 100% of the time, but then sometimes, you know, put in those flat traps with kings or aces, and then, you know, in this spot they have a very narrowed range that's, you know, a lot of the times just going to be over pairs. And now he also very untypically bets the ace king high on this flop, just representing that strong cold call, you know, not really having a hand at this point.
On this flop, but he's not going to have to. And excuse me, Postma, that's 11,000 into a pot of 23.
So ace king high, backdoor clubs working for him. Nope, there's only one club on the board. So it's really just...
He gets back to Simao here, and he has a decision to make. The button actually folded, and he has to decision whether to continue against his half pot bet, and then, you know, making some hero calls on the turn versus the, you know, I assume jam all in. If he calls here, there will be a bit less than pot size left. Now, if you look at his own range, he's gonna have some queens, kings, or aces, especially kings or aces in his 4-betting range here, and he's obviously not at the top of his range, even though he flopped top pair on this board. In the context of a 4-bet pot, that's not even that great of a hand, because if he did have the hands he was representing, he would be much stronger, and also he would beat some of the combinations his opponents are betting here with, namely the queens, if he didn't have them himself. If he had queens himself, I would have really found it more interesting, because then he would block the queens, and he would really have to make a decision whether his opponents have particularly aces or kings, and yeah, you know, that would have been somewhat more interesting than him having exactly king jack offsuit. Well, whether he has queens or king jack off probably also doesn't matter that much, because if he has queens, that means his opponents could still have jacks more often. If you have a jack in your hand on this board, your opponent's only gonna have 1 combination of jacks, and if you don't have that, your opponent's gonna have 3 combinations of jacks, which, you know, Postma could certainly have in this spot. It's less likely because Simao has that case jack. Let's see what he does.
The backdoor straight draw in addition to his 2 high cards.
And what value hands is Postma gonna do this with? He's gonna call a 4-bet.
It's 3 blues, right?
And then lead, now, well, he's not, and then bet at this. I guess queens and kings and aces, but wouldn't he also maybe 5-bet those hands?
So this is the biggest pot we've seen so far. There is more than half a starting stack in the middle already.
So now, like a set of jacks is the hand that might play it this way, but if you're Simao, you've got a jack. That makes a set of jack.
Simao decides to let it go here, you know, thinking that his opponent's probably gonna have too strong of a range. It happened that this guy had a bluff, but at the same time you can see that there's an interesting dynamic going on here, and how ranges are perceived. And, you know, the next time maybe you're in a spot like this, you might, you know, take a stab at it thinking that your range is perceived as very strong, cold calling this 4-bet, for instance, and not just, you know, automatically checking your ace king high because your opponents might give you a lot of credit. I'm not saying this is as a great play, because at the same time, when he has ace king himself, the button who squeezed could have literally have that, you know, strong range himself as well. So he has to also get through the button and through Simao, who could still be checking aces on this flop, and sometimes kings as well, being the 4-better, even though I think the kings he would have bet a little bit more often here on this flop. So Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comment section. There's going to be a chip count in the description below. How did you like this hand? Yeah, let me know what you thought about this hand in the comment section. Thanks guys for watching. See you for the next video.